Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Room 592, where we unleash the truth. And I must tell you, this week, today, first working day of this week, is also the first working day of a new government of Guyana. Ladies and gentlemen, after over 150 days, these elections are finally over. For almost 150 days, we have been sitting with you and chatting with you all via our elections watch under the good hands and leadership of Mr. Leonard Gildari and yours truly, and also in room 592 here. For all of these days, we have been sitting, talking, assessing what's going on and how we can take things forward. That is now behind us. The hard work now starts to build Guyana, build it and take it forward as far a place as we want it to be and as far a better place as we want it to be. Ladies and gentlemen, with the swearing in of the new president and the new cabinet that will soon be named, we also have accolades coming in from all over the world. As of today, we have seen messages of congratulations from the White House issued to the new president, congratulating him for his swearing in on becoming the president of Guyana, as well as other congratulatory messages coming in. And of course, last night in room 592, we had a number of guests, both local and international, who gave their thoughts, shared their opinions about the declaration and what happens and what challenges they see for Guyana in the immediate future. And we want to continue that discussion tonight with some of our esteemed guests who you have seen in room 592 before, but now joining us under a new paradigm. A government is now sworn in and our senior counsel does not have to add even one more gray hair to his head. He is, he does not have to agonize at least about an election or a pre-declaration election challenge. So Mr. Senior Counsel, Mr. Anthony Astaphan, welcome to you, sir, as we also say welcome to Mr. Paul Nehru, Tennessee, and we will be joined by Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan in a couple of minutes' time. But ladies and gentlemen, let me say a special welcome again to our Senior Counsel, Mr. Anthony Astaphan, and to go, we don't want to keep him all night, but we certainly would love to hear what he has to say. And Tony, over to you, Senior Counsel.
Well, thank you for having me. And once again, and I'm very glad you don't want me for the whole night because I can't stay for the whole night. I'm delighted with what has happened in Guyana. I think the rule of law has prevailed, and those who fought for it must be congratulated. Absolutely. It's a significant win for the rule of law. It took 100+ days. I mean, Jesus took 7 days to create the world, so the Bible says, but sometimes other things take a little longer.
Yes, yes, indeed, indeed. And thank you for that, sir. But I'll tell you what, one of your colleagues in the Guyana end, as you know, Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin, he is not here tonight, but he has been active on the political front. And so we want to wish Mr. Sanjeev Dattadin well as well. But Senior, is it poetic justice? Is it a paradoxical thing? But now, because now Mr. Mahabir Anil Nandalal is the Attorney General and the Minister of Legal Affairs, and he may very well have to go to court to answer to some of the cases he would have brought when he was in the PPP in the opposition. How does one wade through that kind of challenge, sir?
Well, I think the new Attorney General needs to have a very long and serious talk with Mr. Mendes about that. I have not yet spoken to him at all. My discussions have always been through either Sanjay or Douglas Mendes. But I think the Attorney General needs to have a very serious chat with Mr. Mendes or whoever he wishes as to the way forward in these matters, because he's clearly a conflicted party, seeing that he was part and parcel of the fight. And with the election petitions, persons who won are going to be the first respondent, and the other are going to be the GCOM and others, the returning officer, and very likely other organs or authorities of the state. So he has a very difficult tightrope there to think. But I have no doubt he will seek the best advice that he can, and it will be properly resolved, because generally speaking, as I mentioned the last time, these political fights tend to be largely between the political parties, and the electoral officers are represented by council, approved or appointed by the state, because they are public officers of the state. And that the Attorney General ought not to get involved in any partisan way. As I said to you, that was one of my gentle criticisms of Basil Williams. And I think my same thoughts on these matters would apply to the current Attorney General, that he ought to stay out of it. I think his obligation would be to ensure that the electoral officers and the GCOM are properly represented, and that his political party ensures that the politicians who won their seats are properly represented in any election petition that may come.
And Mr. Astaphan, sir, senior counsel, you would have seen and you would have been, although from the legal perspective, you would have seen and maybe have expressed an opinion about elections all across the OECS and in many countries of this side of the Caribbean and stuff like that, sir. What would be Senior Counsel Anthony Astaphan's advice to Guyana's new president under such a division that this society has experienced over the past 150 odd days, sir?
In relation to the petitions? let the politicians fight it out. Let
Yes.
the political parties fight it out and stay away from it. Comment as little as he possibly can. In fact, he ought not to comment at all. If any comment on any legal issues ought to be made, it should be through the Attorney General. But I think that the election petitions, I'm going to be quite interested to see what they have to say. And to see how they're done. But generally, the fight, to give you an example in St. Vincent, Douglas Mendez represented the electoral officers. Vincentian lawyers represented the politicians. I don't remember the names, but I represented the Attorney General. We were on the same side at that time. And our positions were very different in terms of hostility, cross-examination, aggression. Certainly on my part as representing the state, than was the position taken by the other lawyers who have the right and the duty and the obligation to get into the trenches and slug it out.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that should not be the function of the Attorney General, except it's a credible, bona fide issue of law that is genuinely disputed, not fake news disputation, genuinely disputed. Other than that, I would ask him to focus on advising the government on the way forward from now on.
Great. Well, Mr. Anthony Astaphan, thank you for that, sir. And we do know we have called on you before to join us while we were awaiting the elections declaration and the results of the elections. And we are thankful that you were able to join us a number of times. And we are thankful that you joined us, even though for a couple of minutes today, sir. It's been a pleasure to have you here. Leonard, any word for Senior Counsel?
Definitely, we want to say thanks on behalf of Room 592. It's always good to hear another perspective, especially when it comes from somebody with as wide as experience as Mr. Astaphan. But sir, I want to ask you, were you surprised this morning waking up, or did you learn yesterday about the events that took place in Guyana?
I learned yesterday. You know Sanjay was going to WhatsApp me. I mean, that was an inevitable.
Yes.
But I think he got carried away. He forgot to follow up on the WhatsApp. So he must have gone home happily in the clouds.
Left hanging.
There's one point I want to make before I go, Jog. I know you have. I listened to a bit last night, and I heard the discussion on the bloated list.
Yeah.
The word bloated is absolutely misrepresents the facts. for a number of reasons. We hear it every day in the OECS. Every political party has the right to object to persons on the list. But because of continuous registration and ineffective objections being taken by political parties, you find the voters list tends to give or take a few percent close to the national population or close to a certain amount. But that's not what you look at. What you look at is the average turnout during the vote. And you will find that regardless of how much larger the voters list has got, like Dominica, Barbados, and others and so on, the average voter turnout is never on a spike or never on a decline. Give or take a few percentages, it is largely the same. And that by itself repudiates any suggestion that quote unquote a bloated list is a vehicle for fraud. Having said that, I think I have exhausted my time with you, sir. Unless you have another question to ask me, I can stay on if you wish, but I would like to go.
Sorry, I would prefer to hold the extra time that I might have wanted to keep you for another such discussion, sir.
Sure.
So I'm going to let you go, and we look forward to future engagements with you. As usual, all compliments of yourself and our director that's in the room with you there. And please give Madam Director, please give her our best regards to you, ma'am, on behalf of all of Guyana and, of course, Room 592. Best regards to
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight, sir.
Thank you. I did tell my mother-in-law you've given me a new boss, but it's all right. Take care. All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, goodbye. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Senior Counsel Mr. Anthony Astaphan, giving some words, his advice as to how we chart our future and stuff like that. And let me say a special welcome to Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan, who I've always called a brother of mine. Welcome to Room 592, sir. And, ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to welcome both Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan and Mr. Paul Nehru, Tennessee, to Room 592. They have been a long time in politics in Guyana. And, I've always said when I grow up, I want to be like these gentlemen, that's in politics. But, we have asked Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan to come here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, not so much to relitigate what has happened in the past, but to give us his impression, his inspiration as to what happened yesterday, the declaration, his words to the new president, and stuff like that. So, Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan, former Minister of Public Security, sir, welcome once again to 592, where we unleash the truth. And I am going to defer to you, my brother, for your comments. The mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Brother Yog. For those viewers that don't know, we go back a long, long time in quarantine when we were, running around without slippers and shoes and so on. My father and Yog's father were personal buddies. Yog, I'm very happy to be at 592, is it? 592, Room 592 with you. And to make some comments, I would have really thought that you would have been asking some questions, but giving me the floor has given me more or less the opportunity to widen my horizons as to what transpired yesterday. I have, or the Alliance for Change has issued a statement in which we are saying that essentially having evolved via all that which transpired since the 2nd of March, and to a peaceful transition of government is a remarkable achievement in view of the context and all the circumstances. We cannot get away from the fact, Yog, that indeed it has been bruising, it has been hard fought, and to the extent that had some unhappy circumstances, I am very, very proud of the fact that we walked the walk to the extent of ensuring that there was a transition. We all had indicated that we are going to wait the final declaration from the GCOM chairperson, and that came after, of course, the case of the Court of Appeal had so declared that it's the recount numbers that had to be used. And I want to say that our Constitution was respected, our systems of governance and the machinery for elections matters all worked, notwithstanding the challenges of it being that late, and so on. I also issued, as part of that AFC statement, the fact that we did see certain things happening, and in moving forward, we are going to proceed as our partner APNU and the former President Granger indicated, with an elections petition. There has been some credibility deficit in relation to the anomalies and illegalities and irregularities and so on that were found. And to that extent, then, we are going to use again the High Court, as all the previous court's decisions have indicated. That is where we have to go. And also, it is important that we utilize that as a measure to ensure that we get, in my view, what is called redemption out of the process that validated what I regard as invalid votes. It is nothing new in any democracy. We feel that these things happen, and we have to utilize the institutions of democracy and move forward. So we are going to do that and move forward. I want to say that as the opposition now, we are going to hold very firmly and sternly to the processes of good governance by the new administration. And that was also elaborated very clearly in our AFC's statement today. Mm-hmm. We are not going to allow any discrimination. And I want to say that hearing some news this afternoon about the presidential announcement in relation to appointees as PSs and so on has, reignited in me some passion that this must not be allowed to happen. Political or ethnic discrimination will not be allowed. We will seek further clarification as to what happened this afternoon, but indeed, we will not allow that. Marginalization of the opposition and its supporters, not going to be allowed. And we know how to walk the walk, and we are entitled to use political action, and we are going to use it if it needs the usage thereof.
Right.
We are, yeah, go ahead.
So let me ask you, sir, in terms of the AFC, where does the AFC go as a party from here? Are you going to remain in the coalition, for example? Where does the AFC go from here?
Oh yeah, we had signed up a Cummingsburg Accord, and as part of the minor partner with the APNU, and we are going to move ahead with a coalition politics. We believe in coalition politics. And we see the coalition of APNU and AFC as a start into that kind of politics. It saw us in government in 2015. Unfortunately, it did not continue that course in relation to what happened here. We have our issues with the elections and so on. But we are going to be with our partner and move along with a legislative agenda that we are going to formulate in a couple of days' time and move on with what we're going to do in the legislature. Right. And also what we're going to do as political education across the country, in getting back especially young supporters that have indicated, their disappointment and their hurt as to what has happened. It is important that we continue doing all that which politicians in an opposition will do too. We were extended certain courtesies by the opposition then in 2015. We will certainly extend these courtesies back to the opposition, to the governing party. But we will want to live the civil life, we will want to live the civilized life and ensure that we work along as best as possible. And these are some of the target areas. We do not want to see discrimination. We do not want to see marginalization and that kind of thing that I mentioned in the statement.
I certainly hope that we can get we can finally get President David Granger to well, former president now, but still he carries the title with him, to come in room 592 sometime very soon, because we have invited and invited, but not. But question to you, Mr. Ramjattan, do you see or how? What's your reaction to the following question? That remaining in the coalition is subsuming to the largest party in the coalition, and the AFC therefore becomes dissolved by remaining in a coalition. Because you're in opposition, it's time for you to now get back to your grassroots and get your stuff going, don't you think?
Oh, certainly. We have always been with the grassroots. You could not have mustered in a coalition 217,000 votes if you are not with the grassroots. And a lot of people have propagandized that we were subsumed. And that propaganda came especially from the People's Progressive Party. And it probably had an impact. And a lot of people felt that we are made de minimis. We are not. And I must tell you that whilst in government, a lot of the measures that I took as public security minister came from me. Mm-hmm. And you were given a scope. The major achievements that we made in the public security ministry, professionalization of the police force, so many things, forensic department, a whole host of things. You know, you are allowed under President Granger to do these things, and as an AFC minister in that context. So you had your place. So we did our politics. We are independent of APNU. We sometimes have sharp disagreements, but you know, they're not emphasized. Everybody says, and a lot of reporting and journalists and other people say, well, we have just been subsumed. That is not true. And so we are going to see unity in this coalition that can hold the PPP at bay. I feel being disunited will sharply lessen the impact. And of course, we are going to go back all over the countryside. We got lots more time now, and do exactly what opposition parties do as the Alliance for Change and as a partner in the coalition forces with the APNU.
So have you guys met as yet as an opposition? Have you had time to meet? Is there any discussion ongoing as to who would be the opposition leader and stuff like that?
Nope, we have not, but we have been engaging, you know, like on the WhatsApp and what you have here and so on. But officially, meeting, that will be shortly. I can just tell you that will be very, very soon.
Right. Let me say this to you with a bit of a wide smile on my face. The last time you, me, and Leonard Gildari chatted on a program, Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan said, I would tell Irfaan Ali congratulations when a declaration is made. So
I did in that statement today. I don't know if you saw it. I congratulated him. I said, let's put political rancor and disagreements aside, and we must congratulate him. I wish him the best.
Thank you.
And I have done that.
What is your advice? Forget politics aside. What is Khemraj Ramjattan's advice to President Irfaan Ali?
Do not govern the way you did prior to 2015. Consult with this opposition, because this opposition is extremely powerful, and also have an agenda that could coincide with what we have had over the last 5 years, and which we have indicated we are going to come out as a coalition with that fixed agenda. We want this country to move forward. We have indicated that there must be equality in relation to the new wealth in the oil and gas sector. That has to be distributed geographically, you know, as wisely as possible to ensure maximum infrastructural works, and also that will be beneficial to the entire country and not certain spots or certain regions and things like that. We also want to start off with governance structures that are going to be even evolving to a higher level, and be proud of being professionals in almost every department, carrying out the work and executing the services that are required for the people out there. Right. We want to see the Guyanese having better lifestyles, better being educated more, civic education, the local government elections being made operational every time that they're constitutionally due, as we have done in the APNU AFC government. And we want all those constitutional bodies to function properly. Public Procurement Commission, all the gamut of them. And we feel that that kind of evolving of the PPP into that higher stage of governance, we certainly will want that to happen. And that's what I will advise the PPP to do. Otherwise, we are going to not be friendly. We are not going to be ad idem, and that might not be for the best interest of the government.
Let me take your mind to your own internal political party coalition mechanism. When the last time you yourself would have been on the APNU AFC airways, and I know since David Granger would have made the statement he did yesterday morning, there has been a lot of vicious attacks on persons like David Granger, on persons like Khemraj Ramjattan in particular, the two of you. From your own support, well, from persons who would have been seen to be your supporters. I've seen online social media about an hour ago from one Rickford Burke. Some really, really, really negative things. I cannot deign to repeat them here about you, sir, and about David Granger. What would be your thought? Because these things would be inimical to your plea to your own supporters, isn't it?
Look, on the Alliance for Change score, answering that question, we allow the freedom of expression, which is alive and well in Guyana, especially under the APNUFC government, and continuing now that they can have their views. Rickford Burke has always been a critic of Ramjattan for a long, long period of time. And I will always have my critics. I mean, the critics that came from the PPP when I was expelled, a lot of people don't know this, but expelled, you know about it, 2004, on Black Friday, remember? They were the harshest. They continue to be the harshest, quite frankly, in my book. But that is the course and the journey a politician has to live with. You got to get a skin of a rhinoceros, you know, if you want to be a politician in this country. Because forever, whatever position you take, half the country will not like the positions you take. And you know that if you are going to be wagged by anybody else but your party's leadership and your personal leadership, well, what's the use of being a political leader? And so we are going to take our blows, and we're going to give our blows, and feel that there is justification in this statement, that democracy is alive and well, freedom of expression is alive and well under the arrangements that we have. And we are not going to block people. We know of even solid supporters and even members who have been critical of this process.
I know Mr. Gildari is waiting to ask you some questions. I have one more for you, sir. I know I promised you that we're not going to keep you the entire night. One more for you from my perspective. Elections has taken 150 days. If today was March 2nd, 2020, or yesterday, if yesterday was Elections Day 2020, would Khemraj Ramjattan do anything different than what would have happened over these past 150 days?
You know, that's a difficult one, because we can't undo history, as it were. The circumstances that all played their own dynamics is what caused this. It was very unhappy, if I may say so. And I would not want it to again repeat itself. We must try as best as possible for no recurrence of that. But the dynamics also revealed a lot about how elections in Guyana are conducted and how GCOM will have to have absolutely a different dispensation. A lot of the fault, I feel, are with GCOM, and I wouldn't want to say specifically what I would like to see happen, but we must, and this again is in a conjoint effort with the PPP to see electoral reform, to see constitutional reform. And those are the things that I would like to see that we ought to have done over as a result of the 5 months period that took us and brought us to where we are.
Are you going to release your SOPs anytime?
The SOPs are with some people that, yes, I suppose we'll release them, those that we have. And certainly, we are going to an elections petition case, and if the court so requires, we'll certainly give as much as we have. And you will see them all there. We are also going to give them the CEO's report, which shows the aberration, the dead people, and the other things about people who are overseas voting and the documents not being there. We will also give the reports of the chairperson who said that there were things that happened there, but it is for an elections petition court. So feel that we are going to give everything that will bring out our case and make the remedies that we seek of the court happen. So it is important. Don't feel that we are afraid of that.
Great. Leonard?
Thank you very much. I wish I had as thick skin as Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan. How are you doing, sir? All right?
I am doing all right.
Pretty good. I want to ask you...
as you'd expect, disappointed with what happened, but you have to be there and dealing with all the issues as a political leader and making these... answering all these hard questions that you guys are putting to me.
No, man, these are so soft, man. You should sit a normal time with when yoga is in its stride. But let me ask you, sir.
Okay.
David Granger.
I'm glad that you know yoga, and that is why. But I know you so good, so let me hear you now.
No, I'm very simple. Okay, did President David Granger confer with you yesterday when he made that concession, that statement that he issued?
No, actually, but the whole point of it was that he had indicated that he was going to ensure the phases, and one of the phases was the final declaration. And once we didn't file our appeal to the CCJ, the final declaration had to happen.
And sir,
we knew that it was going to be the recount based on the Court of Appeals decision. So it was not new to me, and knowing that it had to. The declaration would have been made. No, I didn't get any communication from him, but the prior communication included that.
Sir, based on, is there an arrangement now between the Alliance for Change and the APNU with regards to how many seats, how the seats are going to be shared in the National Assembly? And if so, could you tell us what are some of those?
We had an arrangement in the Cummings-Berg Accord, Leonard, that is what governs the relationship of the two parties, AFC and APNU, and that is a 70-30 percentage. Remember, we had 60-40 before, and it will be 70-30 now.
And that arrangement still holds?
Oh yes, that arrangement obviously still holds.
And how do you respond to people who say that the AFC is dead?
Well, again, but hold on.
Freedom of view.
Let me add this. Let me add this just before you answer that. So let me add this to you. You see, I don't like the way Leonard worded that question.
I can't be diplomatic, man.
Is a lawyer you're talking to? The moment you give him a question letter, he would answer you in a particular way.
Oh, let me hear you. Go right ahead.
you gotta look at the gentleman you're talking to. No, here is the question.
Yeah.
Khemraj Ramjattan said a while back, when you were in opposition, when the PPP had a minority government, Khemraj Ramjattan said, he predicted that the FC would be a dead meat party if it joined the PNC.
I did say so, and I changed my views depending then on the circumstances, and the change of view saw us in government. And I can tell you that working with President Granger and Harman and the rest of the APNU people with my team, we were not made political dead meat. We started off as a political party with 5 seats. Then we won 7 seats. Then we won a government in 2015 and had 12 seats. And we got a little less in after the political negotiation, and we'll end up with 9 seats or 10 seats, the December 30.
Right.
So it is important that you understand that we are not political dead meat. And we have made a lot of progress with AFC ministers in certain positions, natural resources, security, telecommunication, infrastructure. And so if you want to think that we have been political dead meat, those are political heavyweights. And that is what we are.
So Mr. Ramjattan, thank you for joining us tonight. I know that we will have a lot of engagement in the future as we look.
Oh, certainly. I would want to engage as much as possible.
Yeah. Because I guess, in terms of building and having the new government take its role going forward, everybody in Guyana has to voice their views and ensure that we can discuss. Because, sir, the other thing that I would want to ensure that we can discuss, there's been a lot of concerns expressed about racial bias, one way or another, racial polarized voting, racist thinking, all kinds of things. And so the conversation, don't you think, Mr. Ramjattan, has to start urgently with regards to bridging a divided nation that continues to be divided with race?
If there's one thing that I had not mentioned that is of so paramount in importance as a topic, is that exactly. And of course, you know that the AFC started off as a multiracial party and will continue that. That was also part of the AFC statement that we made today. Yes, Yog, that is a fundamental problematic that we will have to get resolved in this country. Great. Guyana is made up of 6, as they call it, races. We have to solve this racial divide. We have to solve the political divide. And that was of importance. And that is why I felt that joining and coalescing, that's the word, with APNU is formation of a coalition. And that is racial unity at a certain level. And we need to get there at a larger level. And I would hope that that is also one of the big points the PPP and the President Irfaan Ali is going to address so that we move forward. We are going to be a very powerful country in the Caribbean with our oil and gas sector, and we must move forward. We are going to be probably the most progressive in the sense of economic value. We are going to grow by 54% this year, notwithstanding all the problems. And so it is important that we ensure that that happens, but we have to have unity. Unity is so fundamental, and it was the byword of Chetty Jagan, of Bonham, so many other leaders. Thank you for allowing me to be on the program, Yog.
Could I ask one more question? Have you been?
Yes, Leonard, please.
Yes, sir. Have you been told by Moses Nagamutu whether he's returning to Parliament? And just in closing, sir, could you also tell us what are the biggest reasons that you believe that people would have been not happy with the coalition?
Well, we are doing our introspection. There will be, as we have, our narrative is that there was a lot of invalid votes that happened in the elections. And that is why we are going to the elections petition. But like every government, there were some mistakes made. In relation to the Moses Nagamutu, we are going to make decisions, and it is the coalition via the Cummingsburg Accord. I think we will have some changes in relation to inter parliament this time from the AFC, and that is as much as I can tell you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And certainly, I would want to have you back and others back as soon as that election petition is filed, because we want to talk about that. And it's been good to have you here in room 592, Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan. And do give our best regards to your family, sir, and have a wonderful night. Thank you once again.
Take care. How do I call it? Bye, G. Take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that has been Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan. As you know, the APNU AFC is now in the opposition. And I know we have our senior with us here, Mr. Paul Nehru, Tennessee, joining us once again to give his opinion and his thoughts and guidance on the elections declaration and the new president. And Mr. Tennessee, my apologies, sir, that you have had to sit so long waiting for our two guests to complete.
No, it was educational. I like it. It's good sometimes to listen. I do a lot of listening interviews. I learn a lot. I make notes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, let me remind you, you're in room 592. You can get us on the link there. We have the YouTube link that is pinned to our Facebook page. You can get us on 99.1, 99.5 FM all across the country. And, of course, on Kaichur News website and the Kaichur Radio Facebook page. You can get us all there at any time. And please know that you can also re-listen to these programs. You can come back to the Kaichur Radio Facebook page. You can go to room592.com and you can see all the recordings of Elections Watch and this program stored there, as well as you could go on my YouTube channel, Yog Mahadev YouTube channel, and you can programs stored there as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me just say to you that one of the things we want to do in room 592 going forward, that is, under what we have here, along with my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildari, is to engage the politicians from a reconciliatory perspective now to see how we can heal, how we can bridge the divide, how we can bring persons together. We have had 150 days of bashing each other, telling each other how they have gone wrong. I am not here to prove to anybody anymore that they have done wrong. They know who has done wrong, know that they have done wrong and what they have done. Our job here now, Leonard Gildari and also Mr. Tennessee, I believe, is for us to see how we can point to corrective actions, how we can heal, how we can bridge the divide and bring people together. Undoubtedly, and this is one of the reasons why we invited Mr. Ramjattan here, and we have extended and are extending invitation to Joe Harmon and David Granger and all of them, because undoubtedly they will be the face of the opposition. They will still be part of the political structure of Guyana. And so we have to engage everyone, especially if we want to talk about healing. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, APNU AFC has 32 seats, 31 seats, sorry. LJP, ANOG, the joined parties have 1, and the PPPC has 33. So anytime we are talking about any of the parties, we're talking about a wide swath of the Guyanese population. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again welcome Mr. Paul Nehru, Tennessee. He ran as presidential candidate for the DLM many years ago, and he has been in Guyana's political life since 1964, prior to our independence. He has certainly, since then, put his stamp on the Guyanese history. And since he would have migrated and gone to lend his services to the universities overseas, he has also started a think tank in the Washington area that seeks to provide advisory and other service to Guyana and other places. So, Mr. Tennessee, welcome once again to you, sir. And the mic is yours, sir. Your reflection of what happens today after these 150 days and what you have to say to the new president.
Well, I'd like to say thank you for having me on the program. I'm in a celebratory mood the day after because I am happy, first of all, for Guyana, my first love. I'm happy that democracy has become a reality once again. I'm happy that we had an election in 92 with a change of government, an election in 2015 with a change of government, and a change of government in 2020. What that means is that we as a Guyanese people are on a learning curve about the democratic process. You know, I taught one semester conflict resolution, but I came to the conclusion that in the human affairs, there is no conflict resolution. What we do is conflict management. So we are going to have again and again conflicts about elections. It goes with us being human beings. But as long as we have the maturity and the love for Guyana, and that we will not break up the country, and we will keep a democratic framework to ensure that we deal with two very important things that I would like to deal with tonight. But first of all, let me say congratulations to my young friend, President Irfaan Ali. I knew him since 1985. I met him regularly. To former President Jagdeo, now Vice President, uh, Prime Minister Mark Phillips, who I also know, Gail Teixeira, who was my classmate, and the indomitable Mohammed Anil Nanla, and to the entire government. I wish them well, and I was very pleased with the opening remarks of the president. What the president highlighted was that he has identified as priority COVID-19, the economy, inclusivity, and I saw today an interview where he spoke of a very, very important concept, the healing of our nation. You are aware, and you have just said it, there is only a majority of one seat. We had a similar situation before 2015, correct? So we have had now almost a second experience of a government. So the work of Gail Teixeira is going to be tough, but she's very well experienced. Governance and parliamentary affairs. She has to keep, the majority going, parliament working. And I work with her in the PCD. She's quite competent and has the skills of working what I call across the floor. And she would be able to manage and work with a lot of patients to get legislations through and so forth. So the transition team is a great team, and I'm very happy that the young president. I saw him do an interview today. He was quite articulate. He's very well prepared. He's evidently quite well read. And I know him. He is a doer. Because in my listening interviews, I've interviewed him, and he told me when he got the job as minister, the president Jagdeo told him, "You gotta go. I'm giving you the job to go and build so many houses. Go get it done." And he told me how he went about it. He had problems getting the ownership of the land, getting the surveyors, and he told me he went in the trench, deep to his stomach or over his stomach, and helped measure the land. And he got the houses built. I went with him with the president of Roraima Institute on one of our listening interviews, Floyd Haynes, and we saw many of the houses that he built. So he's a man that knows economics, like President Jagdeo. So I'm looking forward to them really delivering. But I think what we should focus on the way forward are two things for now. It's the geopolitical windfall. And I want to talk a bit about that concept and the windfall of oil revenues. There are two windfalls. Now, how are we going to manage these windfalls? Now, regarding the geopolitical windfall, what do I mean by that? Never before in the history of Guyana have we ever had so many nations, democratic nations in the world community, who have consistently, solidly supported unto the ultimate a verifiable free and fair election in Guyana. They went out of their way to do it. Also, we must not forget the Guyanese inside Guyana, not only in the PPP, the young parties, the Guyanese population of a whole, their patience. People did not go into violence, or people did not go into civil war. So that's wonderful. That is something that we should compliment ourselves. The Guyanese abroad also made a very important contribution. So what is the geopolitical windfall? The geopolitical windfall is that we have a responsibility now and an opportunity to take advantage of those relationships to continue to give us solidarity. It should not stop with what happened yesterday and the day before. We must engage them to continue to help us to deepen our democracy. That's number one. And so we want to ensure that throughout Guyana's history in the future, we continue to avoid ethnic and civil wars. You know, this may sound likely to you, but in many countries in the world, I teach US foreign policy and global politics. And I tell you this, there's a concept called intervention to protect. When countries go into civil war and ethnic cleansing and ethnic wars, the United Nations and other countries have to intervene to protect the citizens. We did not have that happen in Guyana. And this is wonderful because it's very important. Now, we have to take advantage of this windfall that we've had, geopolitical windfall, in order to translate it into getting more foreign investors to come to Guyana. Because it's now out there. You know what happened? Before we entered into the problem of whether we're going to have a new government or not, the Wall Street Journal, all the major magazines, New York Times, Bloomberg, were writing about the future of Guyana. For the first time, I went to Washington, D.C., where the president of our Roraima Institute was on the panel. For the first time in D.C., and I've been in D.C. for 20 years doing global politics. For the first time, that place was filled, and 95% were white people. And they were saying there's great hope for Guyana. And Floyd Haynes told them, the elephant in this room is a race problem. So we have that challenge, and we have to deal with it. But this is an opportunity now where we have to use that global goodwill to get more investments. And I'm not talking only about oil. We need investments in alternative technology to oil. We need to have help in environmental issues. We need to have foreign investment in agriculture for food security, in our minings, and all the other areas. Tourism is very important. We have a great potential for ecotourism. So we have to use that. Look, a lot of people do not realize, but if you do a cost-benefit analysis of that kind of goodwill, it's a lot of dollars we're talking about. You know how much money people spend to go out there to get goodwill? So now we have a restored image that Guyana is a country with a democratic framework and with oil revenues that we make. But more important, and here we have a big challenge. In my experience of 10 years at the United Nations, speaking and advocating on behalf of labor, and here in Washington with the World Bank, the IMF, the World Trade Organization, Inter-American Development, and PAHO, and the OAS, the struggle of small countries like Guyana is this. We are faced, and this young president and his team will now be faced, with a lot of policy options. And a lot of times they may want to implement a policy that is not one size fits all as designed by the IMF, the World Bank, or some global institution, because they have their own agendas. And the people who staff these institutions are very often from Harvard and Ivy League universities, and they have never had their foot on the ground. And they make macroeconomic policies that does not fit the realities of our country. So a lot of people speak about foreign intervention and imperialism and about us defending our sovereignty. But you know where the greatest challenge is? How capable we are as a people, our diplomatic community, our foreign policy, our ministers and so forth, to protect and defend that policy space. We have to be very astute because we have to take advantage of what has happened to educate these international institutions that we have a reality which the president in his 3 priorities touched on: inclusivity, every policy that we are going to implement, be it economic, social, cultural, political, the underlining, the pervading theme that has to go through all these policies is inclusivity, inclusivity, inclusivity. Now, this is not easy to sell to bureaucrats and technocrats in international institutions. So I say, first of all, this windfall will help us if we use it well to deepen democracy in Guyana. It will help us to get more foreign investment. And if we manage it well, we'll be in a very good position to be able to make gains on policy space, because all the governments of the global south are in a struggle to get the right to make their own policies, because they're all, the bigger the power is, the more they impose policies upon you.
Right. So, Mr. Tennessee, I just want to take a step back a little bit, because in talking about investment, in talking about the interesting geopolitical angle, and you know, the world is there, basically willing and ready to invest in Guyana. Your thoughts, sir. First of all, is Mr. Tennessee still a Democrat in terms of your thinking from a democratic labor approach perspective, or have you graduated or changed anyway from your grassroots kind of labor approach movement, sir?
No, I've always believed you define the world from where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
So I am Guyanese. Guyana is my first love, and therefore I define the world in relation to Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
In this respect, I believe in democracy. I believe in nationalism, but not nationalism that is chauvinism or sexism. I believe in anti-racism. This is my three ideological thing. Now, I'm very grassroots, very labor-oriented, because I always believe that our genealogy is not from kings and queens. It's from conquest, slavery, and indentureship. And until we bring an end to poverty, I don't want to hear we reduce poverty. We must have a vision to end poverty. Right. Then I believe that is a fundamental criteria for us to move forward. And I believe Guyana belongs to the Guyanese, to all Guyanese. That is our inheritance. That is our real estate. I want to see everybody has a piece of land in that country, so that we would be willing to defend it against any country that tried to encroach upon it.
You talk about land. Historically, what has happened in Guyana is that there has been the sharing out of house lots. There has been things happening in Guyana.
Yeah, but we don't have complete housing as yet.
Correct. But what has happened is that those who have the money would have been able to acquire and accumulate a lot of lands. You know, there are persons, and this has not been critical of them. I mean, investors would invest anyhow and own huge swaths of land all across the country. But how does Guyana go to the future, knowing that in the past, 54 years of our past, persons close to any government have managed to grab on to prime real estate and hold on to it, not necessarily through the front door, but through contacts and loyalties?
Okay, so I want to deal with that in two steps. Number one is that I am not the creator of the global capitalist system. It exists. Right. Guyana has to accept that capitalism exists. But my position has always been, then I ask for capitalism with social justice. One of the models that I subscribe to for many years is the social market economy model of Germany, which was developed by the Christian Democrats of Germany, where workers and working people will have a say in how the means of production is being administered and governed. Now, in terms of land, we are less than a million people. We have 85,000 square miles. There is no excuse for a progressive land policy that will ensure that every Guyanese have a piece of land. Number one. Number two, because it's a capitalist system, you will find that there are people who will get more than others. This is a reality. And that's why we need social justice. That is why we need laws. Now, what you are talking about people getting through the back door, to get land deals and so forth. It's called corruption. It's called corruption. So you are raising another issue, and that issue is how in governance in Guyana can we make anti-corruption policies to ensure that the people are restrained and people are brought to justice, and this does not happen. Now, I don't want to see land being owned by people and it's not put to use. I don't want to see acres of rice field there and it's not being plowed. I think there's a responsibility there that we have to make our land productive. So this is what I mean. Land is very important, but people must have the land, but they must also have resources to develop it. They must have credit. That's what makes American capitalism work. It's not until credit was introduced into America that the small people, the lower middle class, the working class, was able to have houses and so on and so forth. Right now in the crisis, they're losing it. But before we get lost on my other windfall, I want to talk about diaspora. Because in this geopolitical windfall, we have seen that our diaspora, who make a significant contribution consistently in the form of remittances to Guyana. A big part of the GDP is from the remittances of Guyanese abroad. It constitutes more than the aid being given by many countries. Now, what I would like to see when the oil revenues come is that the Guyanese abroad do not have to send remittances, but they could take that money and invest it in Guyana. The head of our institute, President Floyd Haynes, speaks about diaspora bonds, of us floating diaspora bonds. Now, the reason why people will not be able to buy those bonds or engage with those bonds is if they have to continue sending remittances. So things are interlinked. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4 areas where I think, and we must congratulate the Guyanese abroad, they have a lot of resources, not only in terms of their technical know-how, but they also have been sending remittances. Now, I went to a conference at the University of Guyana and I presented a policy for the diaspora, but I don't think the previous government must even looked at it. But in it, I outlined a number of policies that could engage the diaspora and how we'll have to change our policy. Now, the other element of this geopolitical windfall, you cannot doubt, is CARICOM. CARICOM has played a very important role in our democratic advance in these 200 days or so. You agree with that, right? That CARICOM made it. So what are we going to do about CARICOM and Caribbean integration? The first thing I observe is that we need a new job description for a Secretary General. We don't need a technocrat. We don't need a bureaucrat to be Secretary General. What we need is somebody who has expertise in public policy promotion practice. A new kind of Secretary General, because they have to deal with the heads of state. You have to deal with policies. And Guyana is going to become pivotal with our oil well for playing a role in CARICOM. But I don't want us to throw our money down the road. We have to decentralize the bureaucracy of CARICOM. If people are from St. Vincent working in Georgetown, now with IT, I am teaching online. They could work there and we could bring them to the headquarters for seminars, for workshops and so forth. So we need to rethink. And it has to be, and the president of Guyana has experience of this, President Jagdeo also have. You have to reorient CARICOM to do Caribbean projects that covers the entire CARICOM area. It must not be individual country projects. It must be, because you want to build a consciousness as a Caribbean nation, as a Caribbean consensus. And so we have to do that. Now, the other thing with CARICOM, we in Guyana have a very small population. We have a brain loss in Guyana, and we are going to need urgently a lot of skills. And we should give priority to our Caribbean brothers and sisters. We should do it orderly. Nobody should get priority over Guyanese. And Guyanese should get the first option for consultancy jobs first option for any technical, as long as we could find a Guyanese. And after that, the second set of people are CARICOM people. And this has to do with the movement of people and skills and so forth. And CARICOM has been dealing with that. Now, tourism, we have to help the Caribbean. In 1986, I made a speech at board about my vision for the Caribbean because I was Secretary General of the Caribbean Workers' Council, advised 25 unions in the Dutch, French, Spanish, and English-speaking Caribbean. There were 7 heads of state that had arrived in Guyana, and I was speaking to them. We have to help the Caribbean that they do not solely depend on tourism. Just like how we should not totally depend on oil revenues or on sugar revenues or on bauxite revenues. We have to help the Caribbean in order that they could diversify from that just depending on tourism, because they cannot depend on just a ticket collector in New York and Toronto about their future. You know, we have to help those islands, and we have to push for Caribbean unity, but to the Caribbean as an integral part of Latin America. We have to look at the geopolitics. Look, I was in Colombia. I picked up a lot of information, did interviews on the oil there. We have oil in Venezuela. I wrote a book on the oil industry. We have oil in Brazil. We have oil in Suriname. It's fascinating. Suriname has a national oil company that has done very well, very, very well. Up to today, I interviewed a former ambassador of the United States to Suriname, discussing how they manage their oil revenues, their national oil company. And then we have Trinidad out there, which is an oil and gas, but their oil has gone down quite a lot. So we belong to the north of South America. And there is another area where we have a geopolitical windfall. You see, we have all these realities that we have to comprehend, conceptualize, and move it forward. Now, the last point is the windfall of revenues. Now, one ambassador said, one person said by 2024, oil revenues will become 40% of our GDP. Now, currently, Guyana is the second poorest country in the hemisphere. You are aware of that. We are behind Haiti. I don't know now with the situation in Venezuela how that stands, but we are among the very poorest. And we are on the cusp in a couple of years if the money is properly managed. Now, how will this money be managed properly? We have to look at a number of things. We have to look and we have to study it seriously. We have to look at a national oil company. We have to look at the sovereign wealth fund. And we have to don't make the mistakes of country like Guinea, where, you know, Equatorial Guinea, I did a study there. The sovereign wealth fund was run by the son of the president. And, you know, he bought half of Paris. And in Angola, the richest woman in the world is the daughter of the president of Angola. Now they're looking for her in Portugal with all the money she has. Now that is the kind of thing that we really have to avoid. We need to look at the national oil company, the sovereign wealth fund, gas, the pipeline, the refinery, and environment. And in all of those, we have to also look at the whole debate. There was a debate started. I did an interview on television with Floyd Haynes, the president of our think tank, and he's been looking at some of these issues. And we discussed direct payments, because I look at the model in Alaska where they make direct payments to the people, and I look at Oklahoma where they didn't, and compare it, you see? So this debate has to be, we have to engage in this debate in Guyana and decide whether it's better to invest the money in health, in education, in infrastructure, but let the people know where the money is going and how they will directly benefit. So there's a big job ahead. There's work for everybody. And we have to, you know, I don't want the oil sector to be like what we call in Latin America and the Caribbean, an export processing zone. You know, I went through the Caribbean, and you have a company making shirts and uniforms for some people in New York, but they are in an export processing zone. They don't obey the laws of the country. They don't pay taxes. All they do is unemploy people, pay them very low wages, and they take their factory is not integrated into the national economy. We want an oil industry that is integrated into our oil. And we the Guyanese have got to fight for that. And so this is one of the, I want to see that our Guyanese abroad, our diaspora, do not become subsidizers, discontinue being subsidizers to the economy of Guyana, and they become investors. So these are some of the ideas that I think that we have to have in the debate. And very important, oil literacy. You know, I have with me currently, from the time we signed there, we found oil in Guyana and we signed an oil agreement to 2018 December. We collected all the articles that were published in the Guyana Times, the Stabroek News, the Kaieteur News, and the Chronicle. And we are doing a content analysis on how much of that information that is in the public square is technical, political, policy-oriented, just mere exposure of information, or raises a lot of unanswered questions. And how much of that information is qualitative, how much of it is quantitative. In other words, Guyanese people must be taught oil literacy. We must educate our people about the sectors of our economy. We know a lot about sugar because we grew up on it. We have centuries with it, from the time of the Dutch through the British and so forth. So we know about sugar, we know about rice. We familiarize ourselves with bauxite. But oil is new. But we need to educate our people so that they could be able to learn about the sector. Because if our people is not educated about what the economy is and how it works, they're not in a position to hold the feet of those who govern to the fire, accountability, transparency, and they would not be able to influence policies that benefit them. Remember I said in the last program, my mentor taught me only the people can save the people, but the people have to be empowered. Last but not least, I want to just mention local government election is coming up. Now, it's a short period. 2 years is not a long period. But I'm very disappointed that currently, if you go through the country and you interview a lot of the councillors at the local government, that those councils do not meet. They don't meet regularly. They really don't have anything to do. Why do we have local government election for local councillors if they don't have a mandate, if there's not a training program for them, if they're not empowered, if they don't have a budget, if they don't have a responsibility? The vision of Guyana for the future is the decentralization of security, education, and health. These are three fundamentals that must be decentralized to local government.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for that. Indeed, it is an interesting perspective, an interesting explanation. And we need to also, as you rightly say, have an in-depth discussion on the economy and how we can, get it kick-started and get it going in the way that you are saying. Mr. Tennassie, I want to take your mind to something else, to the active politics of the day, if you don't mind, sir.
No, okay. I'm a historian, political scientist, and also international.
President Ali certainly has his challenges cut out for him.
Yeah.
Sir, in terms of the acidity, the negativity we have seen over the past 150 days, how does Mr. Paul Nehru Tennassie see the shape of the National Assembly? How politics do you think, is it going to be a turbulent political period for the next year, maybe in Parliament? How do you see, given your experience in our politics here?
Well, there are two things, is that the election petition, we have to monitor that and see where it goes, how it goes, and how it's handled. That's number one. Number two, inside the parliament itself, you will have a strong opposition. Now, I don't know who would be the leader of the House for the PNC, whether it would be Mr. Harmon or who it would be. A lot depends on who is the leader of the House. and how that leader will develop a relation with Gail Teixeira, who would be on the other side with the prime minister, to be dealing with with the leader of the opposition, the leader of the house, and the kind of relation that they will develop. We also have to have a speaker. They have to agree on a
Yeah.
speaker of the house.
Yeah.
So those five people have got to develop a relationship so that they could keep people, the agenda of the nation, the vital interests of the nation going. But you are going to have no illusion. We are going to have a strong opposition. There is going to be, in the first 6 months, a great degree of bitterness.
Yeah, exactly. So is there going to be more rancor than progress?
Well, it's left to be seen. We've just had an insight into one of the opposition leaders, Mr. Ramjattan, and so it is not sufficient for us to know what they will actually do. They have a lot of internal matters to sort out, and so they also are not in a position as yet. They are not as coherent with leadership, and they are not. Look, there are three things you need to be effective. You have to cooperate, you have to have coordination, and you have to have coherence. The opposition right now is in a bit of a daze. They are divided. There's no illusion about that. When the question was posed about Nagamutu, there was no answer. Still, we are supposed to see whether the PNC leadership is going to agree to the 70-30 division. So they have a lot of things to sort out. They have to sort that out by the time they get to Parliament. When they get to Parliament and they are seated, and we have a look at who is the leader of the opposition, who is the leader of the House, who is going to be, dealing with their parliamentary affairs, and who would be the speaker, and so forth, then we'll be in a better position. I'd love to come back to your program, and we could analyze this. We could analyze it as the first legislation is put before them, and see how it's being handled. But I always believe that you have to treat the leader of the opposition with a lot of respect. He or she is the alternative president of the country, and you have to let them have the resources, the proper office, the resources. You have to keep them informed regularly, tell them what's going on the issue of the border, for example. We should make sure the opposition and the government have got to be one on the border issue. It's now in the international court. That's our vital interest. I am hoping that we in Guyana can begin to learn whether we always have to have a government and an opposition, or you don't have a democracy. You have to have that. But I'm hoping that we could identify at least 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 fundamental issues that are national, of vital national interest, on which we can agree, policies that we can institutionalize for today, tomorrow, and the day after. So whichever government comes, you will change people that implement, but you basically will stick to it. Like American foreign policy. American foreign policy, until now, even with all the turbulence of President Trump, in Guyana, we didn't have turbulence. There was agreement between the Democrats and the Republicans about Guyana and democracy in Guyana. So the thing is that there are certain issues that we have to mature, and civil society can help the politicians with this. We have to identify 3, 4, or 5 issues that we hold out and say, look, these are vital nationals. And last but not least, the Roraima Institute, of which I am associated, we put out a statement, and we had called that they should convoke a table of patriotic governance and convoke civil society, not only in Region 4. I want to see civil society in the grassroots be convoked, so that we could discuss the way forward for Guyana. Because one thing is, the president of Guyana is he's very eloquent, and he's very eloquently articulated a vision yesterday and today, but implementation is the name of the game. I told you before at UN, I once gave a speech on behalf of labor. Vision without implementation is hallucination. So we
Correct.
got to make sure that we implement.
So let me ask you this, and again, back to the active, to the current day
Yeah.
mix there in politics. There is, you would have heard Mr. Ramjattan mention it, there is going to be, perception sometimes beats louder than reality, right?
Yes.
So this notion, a new government is in place. Look, Mr. Paul Nehru, Tennessee, 3 months ago, APNU AFC appointed a new general manager for the Guyana Chronicle.
Yes.
2 or 3 months ago, they appointed another person, Mr. Sherrod Duncan, to a contract in one of the ministries. My point is that they have knowingly, after the elections, made certain appointments. Sir, the new government will now be made to look bad, to let these people go. What is Paul Nehru, Tennessee's advice to all those persons who were on the political platform? They were actively campaigning for APNU AFC. Would you agree, or what's your comment? Should they do the good thing and just resign their position and allow the government to appoint new persons?
Well, this is how I look at it. We're all Guyanese. That's where I start off from, right? There should be no vindictiveness on the part of any government about Guyanese. Okay. Now, we are supposed to have a civil service, a public service, that is supposed to have an independent commission that has procedures on the employment of people. You have to advertise it. You have to compete for the job.
Mm-hmm.
All the jobs I've had to submit my curriculum vitae. I've had to go to an interview to get the job. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we have to, first of all, the government of the day has to share with the public the reality of all contracts. Let the public know about it. Don't let it be distorted. Let them know the truth. Were these people properly contracted? How were they contracted?
But remember, on a point of law, they have a contract.
I agree. They have a contract. There are two ways you deal with a contract. You could pay up the contract. I don't know what the law says. I don't know what the law, if the government will contest the contract. I know of previous cases of people who have had problems and took the governments of Guyana to court for the contract. When they fired me at the University of Guyana, they paid up my contract for 6 months and gave me 6 months wages. Anyhow, so the thing is this, you could have a contract. I had a contract at the University of Guyana. Brought all my things, my car and everything, and came to Guyana and walked out of my doctorate to take a job, and these devils fired me. I had no legal recourse. Nobody fought for me. And I decided to take a blowhorn and a little mini car and go organize a movement until we got free and fair elections. But not everybody is going to do that. So the point is this.
Yeah.
You have a contract. They have to look. We have an attorney general now who is very bright. He has to look at it. If it's legally a contract that is legally binding according to the laws of Guyana, you have two options. You pay up the contract or you let the person work, and you establish some criteria on how the person will work.
So thank you for that. And thank you for that. And we are coming to the end of our program. I'm sorry, I got some more questions that I wanted to engage with you, but we'll certainly have you back in room 592, sir, to have this discussion continue. Because on the point of contracts, ladies and gentlemen, one would also have to question whether it was intentional to create such challenges, knowing that the elections were done. And if anything at all, everybody knows that the APNU AFC knew that they lost the election. So any intent to hire and place people on long-term contracts has to now be assessed under that. But ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the...
should be made public, and the truth should be told, and the law should be obeyed.
Okay? Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me just make this announcement. Last night we had Sir Ron Saunders in our room 592, along with Mr. Peter Wickham, and of course our brother Winston Rogers from the United States. Tomorrow night we are looking to have some youngsters, Guyanese younger politicians, not necessarily with the government, but independent minds who have been part of the political framework in these last 150 days. They're going to come up and have their voices. And tomorrow night, ladies and gentlemen, we are, providing we can manage to do it, if Mr. Gildari says so, it is so. We are hoping to open the lines and receive your calls at least for about 30 minutes tomorrow night to have your words, maybe your words of well wishes to the new government or whatever it is that you want to offer tomorrow night. We're going to open room 592 to the public. We're going to have an hour of discussion with our guests, our panelists, and we're going to have a 30 minutes or more, calls from all of you across Guyana and overseas. Let me also say, thanks to the international personalities who have stood by and make things happen in Guyana. And as we speak, the OAS has issued a statement congratulating the new president and the new cabinet, the new government of Guyana, and also Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, has sent his congratulatory messages. So the accolades are coming in. It's like rain falling. Things are happening very, very quickly. And certainly it's a blessed day for Guyana that we have finally managed to put this horrible nightmare behind us. It's gone. It's done. It's now time to build and build and build. So ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know, Room 592 will continue. We are going to continue this discussion, this analytical program where we unleash the truth. We are now going to go back to what we originally planned Room 592 to be. When I had this dream of making this Room 592 program, my plan was to have discussion on topical matters, sectorial interests and stuff like that. So as politics are going to fade into the background, of course, you can never get rid of politics. We are going to concentrate on the environment. We are going to concentrate on agriculture. We are going to concentrate on investment. We are going to bring back Mr. Tennassie to let's talk about the diaspora investment into Guyana. We're going to bring Peter Wickham to talk about how the Caribbean wants to see Guyana as a stepping stone for their own upliftment. So we have a lot of things to talk, a lot of things to discuss, and a lot of engagement to make, and we are certainly going to do that in this Room 592 coming shortly ahead in the next couple of days and weeks and months ahead, ladies and gentlemen. We all have a role to play in developing this country of ours. Let me thank our guest, our co-host, first of all, Mr. Leonard Gildari, because as you know, ladies and gentlemen, as of today, I am not going to be joining my brother Leonard Gildari on the Elections Watch. I certainly hope, and I'm encouraging Mr. Leonard Gildari to continue the call-in program on the 1:30 hour, but it is up to him to tell us what he plans to do. And, I'm going to put him on the spot right now. Mr. Leonard Gildari, what is happening tomorrow at 1:30?
Well, before that, we make one last pitch. I don't know why Yog Mahadio would have decided not to be, but I understand. We so love you during that time and the time that you've given us. But of course, yes, Yog, we are going to continue the call-in program, and we want to make it countrywide. Let's hear from you what is happening in your community, and so we're going to make it as exciting as possible. But of course, we want it to be something not just a talk show, but we could actually hear from the people and then maybe reach out to the state agencies and ministries to maybe see how they could respond to some of the concerns that are raised. So we're going to make it an interactive kind of program, something that people have been needing for a very long time.
Thank you. And certainly I'm always going to be available to ensure that we have our debates and conversations going across this lovely country of ours. Let me also thank our guest, Mr. Paul Nehru, Tennessee. Sir, it's been a pleasure to have you once again. And we look forward to continued engagement with you, sir, as we look to build this country of ours. It's been a pleasure. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight. It has been a long, hard, sometimes bitter 150 days. But it's past, it's behind us, and we are now looking at what we can do for tomorrow. And tomorrow, we can all hold each other's hands as a country and forget this thing called race and forget this thing called division and really start to work together as one people, one nation, and ensure we all have one destiny. So brothers and sisters, I call upon you all, let us continue to engage and work together. And Room 592 will be here to unleash the truth tomorrow evening. And we will be taking your calls and your questions and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. So wherever you're joining us from, do have a wonderful night. Stay safe. My thanks to the Kaicho Radio technical crew, Raj, Kevin, Josh, and everybody working there. Also to the Kaicho News team, that is working hard to bring you the newspaper in the morning, the owner, Mr. Glenn Lal, and of course, my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildari. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, as I say every night, please do a prayer for this beautiful country of ours. It is still the best country in the world. Be safe. Have a wonderful night. Bye-bye now.